Do you ever feel awkward, embarrassed, uncertain about who you are, and curious about your relationship with your own thoughts in your head? I had a wonderful conversation with Michael Singer, the great author of the fantastic book Untethered Soul. Here we talk about overthinking, getting trapped in your thoughts, lost, caught up in your thoughts, and whether or not there is a way out of the prison in your own mind. Any of you that ever feel like you're tyrannized by overthinking, trapped in thoughts, caught up in there, unable to escape, will love this video. Michael talks about how the ideas of surrendering, how they came to him, how his awareness increased so that he became able to observe his thoughts. And I believe that this is an integral component in the journey to spiritual freedom. Have a look at this video. It comes from a podcast I do, Under the Skin, available on Luminary. I do a guided meditation on there as well. So there's a lot of good equipment and tools on Luminary, which you can get from Apple around this type of stuff. But for now, have a look at this video of Michael Singer. Comment below. Tell me what you want to see more of, what you want to see less of, and where you'd like to see this channel go. Thanks very much. How did you find yourself deviating from the de facto path of most people that live in the kind of countries that you and I are from, America, England, of dedicating your life essentially to individualistic success and material success? At what point did you depart from that idea? How did it happen?
Right. Well, I tell that story in the Surrender Experiment, which you said you'd read. And it was, how do you explain this sort of thing? Why these sort of things happen? That I was sitting on a couch, which I'm sure you've done plenty of times, talking to a friend, and there was that awkward moment where there was nothing to say, right? And you're both just sitting there and it's quiet, and it should be comfortable, but it wasn't comfortable. And instead of being uncomfortable, as I normally would be, this is back, I was first year of graduate school in college, and instead of being uncomfortable and literally doing this, somehow, for some reason, I found myself noticing that I was uncomfortable. Now, it sounds like the same thing. If you're uncomfortable, you notice you're uncomfortable. But this time I noticed that I was uncomfortable. That's all I can say. So somehow my awareness, excuse me, was back here a little bit, back behind where I normally sit. And I watched Mickey trying to figure out what to say, right? Oh, is the weather like today? Or do you want to go get a pizza? Anything to break this uncomfortableness that I was feeling, all right? And I have no idea whether he was feeling it too, but it was just it wasn't anything extreme. It was just that natural ego, a little control over the situation, etc. And so I watched it for a while, and at some point I just said to him, have you ever noticed there's a voice talking inside your head? Have you ever noticed that it isn't comfortable? To which he stopped for a moment, looked at me, and said, yeah, that's going on inside of me right now. And that was that awakening that I never came back from that. And that's the truth. I was 22 years old, and I became, you're a very intelligent and passionate person. You become passionate about something. It became my whole life. What did? What in the world is that voice? Why is it talking? Obviously, it's me talking to me. Why am I doing that? You understand that? In other words, I'm the only one in there. Who's talking to who? And I just really devoted the rest of my life to that journey. And it's taken me a long ways.
I have read your book, as a matter of fact, both Untethered Soul and Surrender Experiment. Just in case anyone listening thought the way you said you've read my book was in some way inquiring or accusatory. I would like to take the stand and reiterate that I've read it. But for the purposes of the interview, I'm recovering some of the territory, although I'm sure there's things that I no longer remember. There are things, Michael, that interest me when you say that. Is like, I of course recognize that I live at that interface. I live at that interface today with most of my interactions, like whether it's if I'm at a 12-step meeting, or if I'm eating with people or out for dinner with friends and my wife last night, that I sometimes feel at odds with the noticing that I'm noticing and the requirements of social engagement or the requirements of economic life, it makes me feel like I understand why many people disconnect from that voice in various ways, or disconnect from that awareness rather in various ways, because it sometimes seems at odds with civilized, conventional, conformist life.
Right. Well, that's what the surrender experiment in my life was all about, which was when I was, 22, 23 years old, I realized that that voice was running my life. And that's what you're saying. If it wasn't comfortable, I left. If it, whatever it was determining what I said, it was determining how I acted, it was determining everything about my life. And yet I didn't know a thing about that voice. Why was it saying what it was saying? Why is it like one person and not another? Because when you like somebody, your voice says, I like her. So where did that come from, right? And if all of a sudden it said, no, I don't think so, I don't think, then you don't. It's like telling you, and your emotions go along with it. And it's this whole psychological system that's going on inside. So I made the decision, and I'm not saying people should, right? But it's nice to share that I wasn't going to live my life without understanding what was going on, because it didn't make sense. Okay. And it had already caused a lot of trouble in my life, just like it does everybody else's. All right. It's like, oh, your relationship is so hard and everything else, and changing jobs. It just decides, I don't like my boss. I don't like the boss anymore. It's telling you that. Why didn't it just say, I like the boss? Like, no one actually pays attention to how much control it has over your life, or why it's saying what it's saying. So what I did was to say, I'm going to take a little sabbatical, hiatus, about a year or so. I meant to put aside, and devote my life to watching that voice and figuring out why it says what it says, what is my relationship to it. And I, in essence, dropped out. I don't like teaching that now, because people shouldn't drop out. I mean, not they shouldn't, but they don't need to. And I'm not teaching them to, right? But I did. I think I was in a doctoral program for economics at the university. And last year, ready to get my doctorate, and I stepped aside and went into solitude, relative solitude. And I watched very, very carefully. And what I saw made me more uncomfortable than what you were talking about, right? Like, watching it when it was in its glory, because you pull yourself aside, it's going to say a lot of stuff, made me realize I don't want to listen to that thing. That thing's crazy. It just changes its mind all the time. It says this, it says that. Like, the reason people drink and do drugs is because that thing's driving them crazy. Do you understand that? Right? You're trying to get away from that inner mess that's going on inside. So basically, over the course of many years, I started an experiment, which was, what would happen if I didn't listen to that? What does that mean? It tells you what to do, and so on. Well, what if I listen to life instead? And that's very subtle. What if the events unfolding in front of me were more important than whether I liked them or not? And I was willing to listen. If I'm meeting this person, perhaps it has some meaning. The fact that I'm not comfortable with them maybe has no meaning, right? And I started practicing letting go of myself instead of letting go of what it told me to. And sometimes it told me to do something, sometimes I wouldn't do it. And what I got was as follows. Just because it told me to do it is not going to be the reason I do it. Just because it told me not to do it, or that it doesn't like it, is not going to be the reason I don't do it. That doesn't mean that I'm doing or not doing. I will let life, the unfolding of life, the circumstances that unfold in front of me, talk to me instead of that thing talking to me. So that's the basics of what I call surrender. You're not surrendering to life. You're not surrendering to people. You're not saying yes to everything. You're just basically saying, my head doesn't know what it's talking about. It's just a bunch of noise. He's making a little allergies. It's just a bunch of noise. And I'm better off not listening to that personal noise. Doesn't mean intellectually, if I'm solving a math problem or I'm trying to decide, create air conditioning or building. I built for a while, reading plans and so on. The mind's wonderful for that. I'm talking about the personal mind. I like this. I don't like that. I believe in this. I don't believe in that. I want this to happen. Oh my God, I hope it doesn't rain tomorrow because I'll die if it rains. That kind of junk. Just the personal noise that, instead of honoring and respecting life, is judging it and trying to tell me how to make life be my way, instead of my respecting that life took 13.8 billion years to get here. That's a big shtick I have, right? That every moment in front of me took every single thing to happen exactly like it did for 13.8 billion years for that thing to be in front of me. Do you understand that? Yes. In other words, if your great 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 grandmother didn't meet your great 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 grandfather, you're not here. Okay? And you had nothing to do with that.
Well, if you enjoyed that video, and I really hope you did, perhaps you'll consider going over to Luminary and subscribing. You can get it on Apple, and also watch this video if you want to get deeper into some new stuff. This is my main channel kind of content, and watch this if you want to go deeper into the well-being. I'd love it if you'd sign up to russellbrand.com, and it's important that you give this a like and comment and stay engaged with us. All right, thank you. Don't go crazy. Stay observant in your own head.